What's going on, guys? Your boy Ooch. Today's video, we're going to be talking about my meta predictions going forward into this upcoming season of the Mega Shine Pokemon TCG Pocket Booster Set. Are we going to see the shifting of meta change from what we're used to? We're going to find all that and more in today's video. So let's get into it. All right, so just a quick background from myself. I have been playing this game since it came out. I've been following it for the lifetime of this game. And I just recently, over the last 3 seasons, have been consecutively getting Master Ball rank. So I feel like to some degree or another, outside of me just naturally enjoying the game as it is, I feel like I have some sort of valued opinion, I guess is the best way to put it, to contribute towards this game, this scene, however way you want to put it. So I wanted to talk about some standings that I'm noticing. So shout out to our boy Tech. Tech sends me all of the online pocket tournaments that take place that I don't know when and how, but I definitely want to find some sort of opportunity for me to enter to see how the decks that I'm using fare in these online formats, right? So I have 2 tournaments, 2 standings to sample, and pretty much what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go over not like everyone's deck, but just to kind of glance at what the top positioning decks are, and then I'm gonna speak off of my experience playing in the competitive format on the game itself prior to the actual ranked season begins, to give you guys what I believe is actually what's going to take over in a way, and what I'm sure a lot of what you guys might end up facing off against in the near future. Just looking at like the top 3 decks right now, we still have Oricorio along with Manectric, which is new because Mega Manectric was just recently revealed in Mega Shine. We still have Absol and Hydreigon, right? So they're still very strong. And we also have the Baxcalibur Suicune combination. And then when you look at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, or I'm sorry, if you look at 4th and 5th, you're still seeing Baxcalibur and Suicune. Still very strong decks, despite them not being like completely new, but that's okay, because that's the point of this video, is to show what's still working and what new things might be working as well. So to go over like the first deck, we are utilizing Pichu. We're utilizing the free ability to toss an electric energy right onto the bench, right? And you're only running 1 copy, which is nice. Oricorio, and my friends know this, I hate this card. I truly do, with a passion, because this card is so crippling, especially since a lot of decks are utilizing EX cards. You're not really seeing too many cards, or I'm sorry, you're not really seeing too many decks that don't require or utilize EX Pokemon. And in this case, Oricorio is definitely one to help prevent that and to help stall in order to build up your bench and your win condition, which is essentially Mega Manectric in this situation. So for those that have not seen the new Mega Manectric card, so this attack, a Lightning Accelerator, has a base power of 80 damage, and it does 30 more damage for each point you've gotten. So early on, when I saw this card introduced, and I think I actually pulled 1 copy of this, I noticed that this is the first time I'm seeing a card, and I could be wrong, so please correct me if I am in the comments, that is a card that actually welcomes and encourages players to be as aggressive as possible. This right here is essentially just all telling. It's like, oh, so if you get the first point, you're doing more, right? And then if you get another point, let's say if you take out an EX early on, then this is doing 60 on top of that, so 140, and it's only 2 energy. And that's the other thing that I've noticed, is that the top tier meta decks are really taking advantage of a lot of these EX characters that only have a low cost energy to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. So you're running 2 copies of that. Of course, you're running 2 copies of the new Electrike, where if you're flipping a coin, if heads, this attack does 30 more, so it has a base of 10. So realistically, I can already see what this deck is all about. You're pretty much trying to get, if you're lucky enough to draw into that Pichu on turn 1, you can start setting up your Electrike into Manectric. You can back it up with Oricorio. And it's very focused, and I do appreciate decks that are very focused, and there's not like too many plans going forward. And it's not to say that there's no other types of backup plans per se, but sometimes Oricorio can essentially act as its own backup plan regardless, because again, if you're fighting against a deck that's using EX cards, they are null and void in the likes of the devastating Oricorio. All right, so this deck's pretty straightforward. This one, I played a version of this, and this is what actually earned me one of my more recent Master Ball season victories, is utilizing Mega Absol and Hydreigon. So for those that don't know, Hydreigon is, I think, still one of the best cards in the game, especially when you consider that it's a stage 2, so it's kind of already nerfed in a way, because you need to utilize rare candy, or you need to go through the phases of evolution just to get up to that point. So unless you're able to actually take out Dino early, then you're kind of cooked. And what makes this guy so strong, he's not an EX, so if you take him out, you're only gaining 1 point. You're not that much closer to victory. And he has 150 HP. His ability basically allows him to utilize Hyper Ray every turn at the cost of him doing damage to himself, which is 30 damage, and that's a nice little chunk. But 130 damage takes out a lot of cards in this game. And so with having Mega Absol EX as well, again, another low-cost move with Darkness Claw, being able to take out your opponent's support cards. I mean, sometimes that could be the support card that they would need to win, or that they would need to put themselves in a better position. So eliminating those types of options is always good. And then this version I'm seeing right now off the bat is they're using Nihilego, which is the poison variant, I guess you can say, that this deck utilizes. And I already see the poison barb that we're running 2 copies of right down there. So again, you're essentially setting yourself up to get your opponent poisoned, and then if Nihilego is there as the back row to just add that extra plus 10 damage, they're going to be losing out on a lot of damage than I'm sure that they would like to be. Everything else that I'm seeing here is very staple. Utilizing 2 copies of Copycat rather than 2 copies of Professor's Research. I've seen some decks where they run 2 of each. I noticed that sometimes Copycat ends up being better than Professor's Research, because Professor's Research, you're literally just drawing 2 cards. At least with Copycat, you're getting a fresh hand, and sometimes you're getting way more than what you already had in your hand, especially if your opponent has a lot of cards in their hand. So Copycat, I feel like, has a lot more function and utilization in a lot of different types of decks. What I am noticing in this build is that they are actually taking advantage of the brand new hiking trail that comes in the Mega Shine booster. That, if you didn't already know, at the end of each player's turn, that player draws cards until they have 3 cards in their hand. So this one is one of those cards that it is helpful for yourself, but it's also helping your opponent as well. I don't know exactly how I feel about cards like this, especially when in any card game, you don't necessarily want to help your opponent, because that is defeating the purpose of winning. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just how I feel. But again, if you're not necessarily worried about what your opponent is doing, and if you're just, thinking of yourself, either way, then taking advantage of Hiking Trail could help with at least making sure that you have 3 cards in your hand at all times. That is the one card that they have in this build that is from the new set, and making an older deck still being prominent to this day. All right, so this 3rd placement deck, this is the Suicune Baxcalibur. Still very form factor. This has nothing new. And honestly, a deck like that was so strong, it really doesn't need anything new from the new set right now. Suicune is still always going to be one of the strongest cards in the game. Just having that drawing ability being at the active spot, having a low-cost move that only costs 2 water energy, and it gets stronger the more cards and Pokemon that are out on the field on both sides of the benches. Then you got the Xian Pao. That is honestly the win condition of this deck, because if Suicune wasn't already doing it for you, then Xian Pao definitely will. And with Baxcalibur's ability of just being able to take a water energy from your energy zone and attach it to the water Pokemon in your active spot, only helps Xian Pao that much more, or Suicune if they needed the energy. But that's real. Baxcalibur is there really for Xian Pao over Suicune. So you're running 2 copies of Suicune over 2 copies of Xian Pao actually makes sense to me, because you kind of want that opportunity to have Suicune out as early as possible to continually run through your deck and run through all the cards that you have, so that you can then get to building up the Baxcalibur a lot faster and the Xian Pao faster. We have Mars, we have Copycat, and Pokemon Center Lady, interestingly enough. And then this version, my version of this did not use Inflatable Boat, but I do understand how Inflatable Boat can serve a good purpose, because the retreat cost of the water Pokemon that this card is attached to is 1 less. So this is specifically for the water types, and more or less, this could legitimately just be for the Xian Pao, so it's just like a free retreat if you're trying to bring it back in. Or it could just, be 1 less for Suicune and Baxcalibur going forward. So everything else is pretty straightforward. Starting Plains is nice to have. Also not a new card, but again, I already mentioned that this deck is still as strong as it is, not even utilizing anything out of the new set that just came out. Every basic Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's, gets plus 20 HP, so that helps Suicune and Xian Pao get to 160 and 150 HP respectively. Pretty solid deck overall. Like I mentioned, this is literally the 3rd, 4th, and 5th placement deck in this tournament that I believe already finished, if I'm looking at this correctly. But I'm scrolling just to show you every single player that was in this event. Literally almost 650 players in this tournament. So let's look at one more tournament before we wrap this video up. Okay, so what I love automatically is that we are getting one new look, a deck that is actually kind of taking the competition by storm. And this is something that I've actually been experimenting with myself. And it's the brand new Mega Altaria Igglybuff sleep deck, or what I would like to refer to as the melatonin deck, okay? Because this deck is literally all about putting your opponent to sleep and keeping them asleep for as long as you possibly can. This is like a whole new stalling tactic. Not new, but this is what's prominent in the meta right now. What this is utilizing is the brand new Darkrai. That is what makes this deck work. As somebody that has been testing this out myself, I've been testing a few different variations of it. I can tell you this right now, a spoiler for, what I think is going to work a lot. I won't say the most, because you still have your Suicune Baxcalibur, you still have your Oricorio versions, whether it's with Belly Bolt or if it's with Manectric. You're gonna have this. How this works is very simple. Darkrai, you're probably never gonna use. This is gonna be somebody that just sits on the bench, holding it as a bench warmer, keeping it nice and tidy for everyone else, and realistically just the Mega Altaria. So that way you can just ride on through seamlessly without putting much effort in. And what's dangerous about this deck that no other deck has is that you don't necessarily need any energy to really get going, so long as you draw into Igglybuff and Darkrai first. So what happens is you have Igglybuff on the active spot. Igglybuff Sleepy Lullaby, which I don't remember what the booster that it comes in. If you go look at Igglybuff cards, the game will tell you. You just gotta scroll down. Sleeping Lullaby does 10, so it's hitting you for damage and also putting you to sleep at no cost. It does not require energy. This is definitely one of the most busted cards when you consider its utilization now, right? So you have Igglybuff in the active spot. Then let's just say you have a great hand. You have both your Darkrai's in hand, bro. Darkrai on the left, Darkrai on the right, like they're pillars, right? And its ability says at the end of each turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, you do 20 damage to that Pokemon. Do the math. 10, 20, 20. That is 50 damage on turn 1. Imagine if your opponent started out with another baby type and all the baby Pokemon have 30. Bro, they're cooked. They're cooked. They're dead. Turn 1. And imagine if they had a terrible hand and they didn't have no one on their bench, bro. You win the game. You is a rare one-turn kill. Very rare. That never really happens in this game. Very, 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 very rare. It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh, that John happens like every other breath. Okay, like you just can't avoid it in that one. That's not a game. That's bullshit. But anyways, now should they survive, they already got hit with 50. So that means that they're going to be scared and pressured to using any of their healing cards, whether they have a lucky ice pop, or if they have a potion, or if they have like a Pokemon Center Lady, whatever they might have, an Irida, whatever, to try to heal them. You're going to burn through their resources early on, which is not necessarily a good thing for them. And so while you're doing that, you're pretty much getting Mega Altaria loaded up, which again, low cost energy, just needs 2. And it's Mega Harmony, but it basically nets 130 when there's more bench Pokemon. This is for you. So Mega Altaria is like, I want to call it a selfish Suicune, right? So, because Suicune, it does 20 more for everybody that's on the board, active and bench. Mega Harmony is 40 plus 30 for everyone on your bench. So you're going to have a full bench. I guarantee you that. If you're running this 2 Darkrai, and you have at least another Swablu or an Igglybuff or whatever, this is net 130, okay? And Swablu, should you not draw into Igglybuff, it at least does sing for 1 energy, funny enough, and that will put your opponent to sleep. And everything else is very straightforward. You got 2 copies of Research, 1 copy of Copycat, so you have your draw power there. Speaking of draw power, you got Pokeball. You got Leaf just in case you need to bring back a Darkrai in case you had a bad hand at the start of the game. This version is running 2 copies of that, so that's actually kind of crazy to me. 1 copy Alicia, also a little crazy to me because I feel like if you, in case you have a bad hand, but who am I to say? I'm not competing. I'm not in a top position, top 1 out of this whole tournament standing, so they probably doing something better than me, right? Giant Cape, 1 copy of that is there to maybe prevent an early baby kill. So if you have Igglybuff there at the front and you're trying to preserve its life, boom, you can just toss it on the Igglybuff and then you call it a day. So those are all the top meta decks that are currently being actively in winning positions right now in actual tournament format. And these players are playing for money, right? These players are not here just to have fun. They're here to actually try to win. They're playing to win. And these are the decks that are working. Now, I also want to share with you guys some variations and some other decks that I feel like for this current and we're entering meta, what we can see. What I have in front of you guys is actually my version of Melatonin. This is Melatonin 2, as you can see from the title. The idea behind this version is instead of using Altaria, I actually wanted to hone more in on the sleeping aspect of this deck, okay? I wanted to make sure that no matter what, I was doing a move that was putting them to sleep. And in a lot of cases, you have these instances where like you don't necessarily need like a huge beat 'em up stick, if you will, to take out your opponent, because if you as long as you have those Darkrai's on the back row, then you are going to be doing a lot of damage. And should you have someone in the front that's enabling the sleep and continuously making sure that they stay asleep, then I think that the combo itself just pays off for itself. And again, I've been testing with this deck. I've been testing with the one that we went over earlier, and it's kind of a mixed bag. There are certain decks that counter this pretty easily, and it comes down to like your typical Hydreigon, Absol builds and Oricorio variants, right? It's like those super strong decks. Those are gonna always do really, really well for themselves. But at the end of the day, the one thing that makes card games, different every time, or in a lot of times, is that you're not guaranteed to just win and get the same thing every single time. It's all about what cards you get at the first turn, right? Like what you draw into, and if you brick, I mean, all decks, I'm pretty sure, like have some sort of percentage of bricking, if you will. So with this version, I wanted to highlight how I am running an older Gengar. This one does Hypnoblast, and it puts your active Pokemon asleep for 70 damage at 2 energy. So it kind of borrows the same ideology that I have, where it's like if you have Pokemon that utilize the least amount of energy, but they're taking advantage of something else, and in this case you're taking advantage of the sleep, then you're literally just off of this combo, you're going to be doing 70 plus 20 plus 20, so you're doing 110 straight off of Gengar, which, I mean, that's pretty strong if you ask me. And then if you wanted to preserve your Igglybuff and make more use out of your Igglybuff, my idea was, okay, why don't we just do a Wigglytuff combo, right? So Wigglytuff Sleepy Song, even though it costs 3, is now doing 80, and you're still putting them to sleep. So the idea, again, you're trying to make sure that they're staying asleep, but I can already see why this version might not be as good as the Mega Altaria version, because with the Altaria version, you straight up only need 2 energy. You need 1 line of evolution. You don't even need to utilize rare candies, which obviously you can see that I run in this build, and that means it's way more focused, and you at least get to do 130 damage should you have all of your back row complete. But it's something that I wanted to try out, and I guess I'm sharing with you guys so that you can see for yourself if this works for you, and it is something different. And maybe you don't even have Mega Altaria. Maybe this could be an alternative version that you can try should you have the new Darkrai that just dropped in Mega Shine. And you know, I couldn't do a video without shouting out my boy Charizard at some point. For those that were lucky enough, like myself, to pull the brand new Mega Charizard X, the EX card, this I think is a very strong build. I have seen people play versions of this where they're using both the X and Y version of Charizard, which is actually kind of insane to me when you consider that we only got 20 cards to work with. While it would be really cool to run both, I think it's pretty unnecessary, and here's why. You run an Entei, you're running Charizard. Entei, honestly, in this meta right now, I think is super strong. It somehow got stronger, and I think it has to do with how much faster it is to make a Charizard feel as ferocious as what it should be, right? The brand new Charmeleon, while its attack doesn't do 50 anymore, it only needs 2 energy to do slash at 40, but it still keeps its ignition ability, which is putting a fire energy on the active Pokemon. And just because of that, that means that the next turn you can evolve Charmeleon into Charizard. Charizard only needs 3 energy to do his move, which I believe is called Raging Blast. Let me see. Yeah, look at that. Oh no, Raging Blaze. Sorry. Raging Blaze does 100, but then once it gets enough damage, it literally does 180. And by that time, it should be enough to take out whomever. So you're not necessarily one-shotting people. I mean, you might one-shot a lot of the weaker Pokemon, but it doesn't hurt itself, which I've never been a fan of on the Y version. I don't like Pokemon cards that hurt itself because it's helping your opponent, and I hate that. And with this, you're literally waiting for when you are at 110 HP or less to then do 180. So for 3 energy, you're doing 100 at base, and you might not even necessarily need to use it, because let's face it, I will be honest with you right now, I've played this just a couple times, and I've found myself actually getting a lot of the work done with Entei now, which is insane, because you can literally take it in whatever route you want. You can literally say, okay, based on the territory, if I have the advantage, I could either continue to load Entei up with energy, and then he'll do 120 to everybody, and he takes out a lot of the basic Pokemon as it is. Blazing Beatdown does 60. With 2 energy only, and that's it. And then of course I have to run the stage 2 basic Charizard as a precaution facing off against Oricorio, because Oricorio is annoying. I mean, you know what? If I didn't have to worry about Oricorio, I'd probably run 2 copies of this Mega Charizard X, and at that point maybe I would do the Y. But again, I really don't like when Pokemon hurt themselves, and even me saying that, let's not forget that this one does 30 damage to itself, but Inferno Onrush does 150, and that's pretty dope. Out of all the new cards in Mega Shine, literally the only thing new out of this one is the brand new Mega Charizard X EX and the 2 Charmeleon. Let me not forget, I am taking advantage of the new Charmeleon. The new Charmander, I think it has 70 HP to start, if I'm not mistaken. It's not, is it gonna show me, or is it just showing me all the, yeah, it is. So this one looks weird. It looks like it's Agumon. Did anyone peep this? This looks like Agumon just because of the head shape right there. Hey, Ty. It does 30 for 2 energy for the Flame Tail. Not a big fan, but if you want to take advantage of having a higher HP Charmander, you could always do this one. Use this one if you want. I actually would prefer having used this Ember and discarding the fire energy from this to doing 30 because you're running Flame Patch, bro. You have, of course, got to run Flame Patch. Flame Patch is such a great card, and I honestly feel like this deck may be very well in line with getting at Master Ball for this upcoming season. All right, so I hope y'all got something out of this video, going over all of the current top meta decks right now in actual tournament play and some of my takes, if you will, some of my opinions as to what I think is going to be strong. So if it wasn't already clear, the decks that I went over are definitely going to still be very viable, and especially the newer ones like the Melatonin one, like with Darkrai and Mega Altaria. I think that those are definitely going to be utilized a lot, but my boy Charizard is back in the conversation. So I'm going to do as best as I can this season to stick it out with my brand new Charizente X is what I call it. And if it gets too frustrating and it's way too meta and I'm just like, okay, I just want to get my Master Ball and be done so I can go back to playing what I want to play, then I will more than likely switch over to my Melatonin, or I will just use the Mega Absol and Hydreigon that got me Master Ball already in the past. So let me know what you guys are playing, and if there's any other decks that I should check out and do another video on in the future. Make sure you guys are liking as always and subscribing to the channel, which obviously it helps. And happy playing. Love what you love. Gang, gang.